We continue with the integrity of the Śāradā Sahasranāma, composed by Sri Sahajaka, the core ritual text of the Autumnal Goddess, surviving in the single scroll retrieved from Kashmir last year. And in this session, we'll look at what we know about this text, its possible origins, its lineage affiliation, and a couple of sample passages from the preface material to the ritual within the scroll itself, in which Bhairava or Shiva describes and teaches to Bhairavi, the goddess Shakti, the liberating power of the Sahasranāma ritual, this particular one being towards Śāradā, and how Śārādā Devi represents the very liberating power of the universe, through which, or the homage to which, one can attain spiritual awakening within one lifetime. Specifically, again, through the performance of the Sahasranāma ritual, which is, as we'll find out in the next session, is only to be performed during the festival of Navaratri in the fall. Now, the authorship and date of the Śāradā Sahasranāma is partly known to us. We certainly know the author, who is, again, Sri Sahajaka, a spontaneous one. This is a name that is not completely uncommon for a Kashmiri pundit, as confirmed by Professor Sanderson of Oxford, although we know of no other works by this particular individual. He tells us that he composed, or rather transmitted, or received the transmission of the Śāradā Sahasranāma from the goddess between the first day of the month of Vaishaka in the spring and the next full moon of Jyeshta. The year is not determinable from what we're told. He gives us the Laukika era, which is a huge span of time, including the present millennium and the one before this. So we can't pinpoint it. We can say that in terms of dating the performance of this ritual, that it probably goes way back, and we'll come to the evidence of this in our next session when we discuss the actual ritual itself, the prescriptions given in the scroll. But we know that worship of Śāradā is quite ancient, as far back as the reign of the Kashmiri king Lalit Aditya, who reigned from 725 to 761 or 2 AD. During that time, the Śāradā sect had reached from Kashmir all the way to Bengal, so that tells us that it had been established well before. And as we saw in our last session, by the turn of the first millennium into the second, Abhinavagupta is celebrating Śāradā as the core power of the people of Kashmir. And of course, by then, Sri Shankaracharya has already received transmission from Śāradā during his pilgrimage from Karnataka and built his pita in Karnataka, the first Sringeri, the first temple to the goddess built in the south of India. But it seems unaware, our Sahasranāma seems unaware, from what I can tell so far, of the Tripura's chief goddess, that is to say, Tripura herself, or Lalita, and her various incarnations. So all this points to the fact that the Sahasranāma might be pretty old, but we can't determine a pinpoint date for it. The lineage affiliation of Sri Sahajaka and the Śāradā Sahasranāma is as follows. The text demonstrates a clear affiliation with one of the Kala-based Shakta, that is to say, goddess tantric lineages of Kashmir. And this is confirmed from an outside source known as the Saptashata or Saptashati, the 700 names of goddess Durga, which indicates that our text derives from the archaic and matriarchal Kali Kula lineage, or the Krama lineage, also known as the Mahanaya, the Great Path, Great Way lineage of Kashmir, to which belong such legendary masters as founder Gyananetra, his disciple, the queen, the Ragni, Keyuravati, Prasvanata, and Abhinavagupta. Now, as we'll see in the next session, the Saptashati, or Saptashata, indicates that this Sahasranāma, although not quoted directly, it's referred to in that text, it indicates that this Sahasranāma is of Kaula origin, that is to say, of the Kali Kula lineage, quite clearly, albeit indirectly. And in the Saptashata, we see the prescription of this Sahasranāma to Śāradā to take place if one wishes to attain spiritual liberation in one lifetime, and the other various benefits that come with performing this Kaula ritual, which it admits comes directly from Kashmir. This is an alternate to performing the 700 names to Durga during the fall festival of Navaratri. We'll come more to that in the next session. The structure of the Śāradā Sahasranāma ritual requires a rishi, a male officiant, transformed into Bhairava before the ritual begins, and a Shakti, that is to say, a human female participant, who is ritually transformed into the goddess before the Sahasranāma ritual begins. And the two of them will be respectively Bhairava and Bhairavi, and we'll see a little bit of their conversation in just a bit. So this ritual transformation of both the Rishi and the Shakti occurs through preliminary yogic rites particular to Tantric Shaivism, centered on the sonic activation of Kundalini via 5 elemental seed mantras of Śāradā, which I have been able to determine. Now, the structure of the Śāradā Sahasranāma ritual begins with, in terms of the ritual itself, begins with the recitation of her 1,000 names that occurs in concert with a well-detailed homa, or fire ritual. Each name for the goddess is to be rendered in the 4th case, the dative case. So, for example, if we have just the name Śāradā, it's understood it should be rendered Om Śāradāya Swaha, as you present an offering into the fire with the right hand. This sacred and highest of all Śāradā rituals, as described in the text by Sahajaka, may only be performed at specific time junctures or sandhyas within the autumn festival of Navaratri, as we'll see in the next session. And here is an excerpt of the preliminary discussion mentioned earlier between Bhairavi as the questioner here, and Bhairava, and his description of Śāradā and her Sahasranāma as the liberating power and the liberating ritual for those seeking to attain awakening in this lifetime. Bhairavi asks, Bhagavanya Mahadevi Śāradākya Saraswati Kashmirayam Sutapasa Shandilyena Avatarita Tasya Nama Sahasrame Bhoga Mokshayaka Sadhanam Sadhakanam Hitarthaya Vadatvam Parameshwaraha. Bhairavi said, O beloved Bhairava, Saraswati, who as a supreme goddess is known as Śāradā, was drawn down amongst the people of Kashmir due to the great yogic austerity of the sage Shandilya. O supreme divinity, for the benefit of all practitioners, teach me the ritual performance comprising her 1,000 names, which grants liberation and worldly blessings. Bhairava replies, Taya tattam midam vishvam, taya sampalyate jagat, saiva samharate chante, saiva mukti pradayani, deva devi mahavidya paratatvaika rupani, tasya nama sahasramte, vaksheham bhakti sadhanam, trivaga paladam gopyam, sadakeshta pradayakam. Bhairava said, this universe is pervaded by her. This universe is protected by her. In the end, she alone destroys the universe, and she alone is the bestower of liberation. The goddess of the gods is the supreme wisdom. She alone comprises the supreme reality. I will teach you the secret that bestows the reward of the universe, that delivers what is most sought after by sadhakas, the devotional practice of her 1,000 names. And finally, in the preface material, Bhairava teaches Shakti and us the dhyanam, the visualization of Sri Śāradā. And to my knowledge, this visualization has been completely lost amongst all communities that worship Śāradā to date. For example, we see usually a version of the goddess Durga or Lalita brought into most pujas or homas to the goddess Śāradā, possibly because this true dhyanam or visual of what she looks like, what she holds in her hands, has been lost to us until now. So this is an exciting moment in terms of the revival of this highest ritual and of our understanding of Śāradā as worshipped in the ancient period. And so our Dhyanam verse, interestingly, is the only part of our scroll that is not rendered in Trishtubh meter. This is in Rathodata meter, which here means the rise of love, the rise of delight, the rise of joy, which is particular to sunset and moonrise. And of course, because Śāradā is the autumnal goddess whose rise symbolizes the rise or the awakening of consciousness, the awakening of the immortal self, it is quite apropos or appropriate that it should be the meter used here. Om Shakti Cha Pashara Gantika Sudha Patrarat Nakala Shula Satkaram Purnachandra Vadanam Trilochanam Shaladam Namata Sarvasiddham. Bhairava said, Om to Śāradā, who grants all the wishes of her devotees. She has 3 eyes, the middle of which is the full moon. In her 4 respective hands are found a powerful bow with arrows, a bell, a chalice of nectar, and a pitcher adorned with resplendent jewels. Now, the description of Purna Chandra Vadanam can also mean, Vadanam here can just mean her face is as full as the moon or as beautiful as the full moon, but it could equally be a double entendre as well, because Vadanam sometimes means the third eye. It could refer to the third eye of a deity. So hence, the middle of which is the full moon amongst her 3 eyes. So this beautiful dhyanam has never been rendered by any illustrator to my knowledge, nor do I know presently, again, of any depiction in any text of this exact arrangement of accoutrements in her hands. So finally, we do have a dhyanam for the goddess Śāradā.